Christopher. I'm a senior. Yes, my name is Christopher Lam. I'm a senior research fellow at the Energy Studies Institute in Singapore. I'm part of the Energy Security Division. And today, I'm moderating a concurrent session at the IAEE International Online Conference on the topic of geopolitics. We have 3 speakers with us today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to allocate approximately 30 minutes for each of the speakers for both presentation and Q&A. Tentatively, I would suggest to the speakers to give a 20-minute presentation followed by a 10-minute Q&A time. But it's up to you how you want to manage your 30 minutes. And the 3 speakers would be Nicolas Mazzucchi, Shen, and Philippe Sulger. And I would like to request, if possible, for the speakers to keep their cameras on all the time, unless you have internet bandwidth issues. That's all for now. I would now like to invite the first speaker to speak. So before the first speaker, I would like to say to the audience, if you have any questions, you can use the reaction feature to either raise your hands or type your questions under chat, and then we will let the speaker answer the questions. I will now move on to let the presenters present. Nicolas, you are first. Would you like to give a very basic introduction about yourself before you start your presentation? You have 20 minutes, 30 minutes, so please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Christopher. Thank you, dear colleagues and participants. I'm going to share my screen as I have a presentation. Okay, can you see my screen now? Okay, thank you. Well, just to introduce, excuse me, briefly myself. So I'm Nicolas Mazzucchi. I'm working in a French think tank, the Fondation for Strategic Research, where I am in charge of energy, primary goods, but also cyber issues. My jobs are, and my research interests are mostly focused on energy security issues and energy digitalization consequences. I'm working with a large array of partners, especially at the international level with the European Union and with NATO, as I'm working also on the energy transition and the military at the moment. I had an experience quite long in the French administration, especially at the French MOD, dealing with energy issues. And I'm author of several books, the last one being in French. Also, unfortunately, Énergie, ressources, technologie, enjeux de pouvoir. So in English, it will be energy, resources, technologies, and power struggles, that has been published in 2017. So today I'm going to present you a research about the idea of the China-Europe electric corridor that could be considered both a matter of energy security and also global geopolitics, with different interests from China and from Europe. So to start, looking at the foresight evolution of EU electric consumption, I used the data provided by the International Energy Agency in the 2019 WEO. Why did I use this specific set of data? Is because in the 2019 issue, there was still the current policies scenario. And the idea in comparing the 3 different scenarios is that we see after a decrease in all the scenarios in the electric consumption, in EU, there is after 2030 back an increase due to the energy transition, due to the global electrification. Europe is quite already an electrified continent, but still there is also a lot to transform and growing areas in electrification. So electricity is becoming more and more an issue of energy security in Europe, in the EU, but also beyond the EU. And the idea of this presentation and this analysis is to understand how we are switching from an EU point of view and EU member states point of view from energy security to some kind of security by energy at the global, and how the introduction of Chinese state companies and the Chinese global strategy for an electric corridor between China and the EU is colliding with this idea from the European Union to consider electricity and to consider globally the energy sector as a basis of its own security. So we're seeing that there are going to be an increase in each scenario. But European Union, looking at electricity, looking at the electric network, was having for years a very different perspective than the perspective it's having now. Since the creation of the European Economic Community, the regulations promoted by European Union on energy infrastructure tended towards the end of national monopolies and the liberalization. There was a set of different directives, so the 96-92 to start, and then two different directives in 2003, 54 and 55, one concerning electric network, the other on the gas networks. The idea in this directive was to split the national monopolies and to separate the activities of electricity production and also gas production from transport system operators and then distribution system operators, in order to create different entities that has to be more or less independent from one to another. And the problem is that having this very liberal view on the energy infrastructure tended to create structural frailties, because TSOs are structurally fragile due to their role in the value chain. It's very difficult to make money being a TSO. It's easier in production of electricity or in distribution, but having TSOs, you're having what could be considered an economic burden for the state that has to be directly financed. And the problem is that this TSO became increasingly fragilized with the economic crisis, with the COVID now also. So for European member states that are most of the time the TSO stakeholders, it's very complicated also to maintain them. And this idea of this regulation is it's opening, and that's the question, an opportunity for China and EU member states to enter, and especially for China to enter the LNG sector of different states because of the fragility of these TSOs and the opportunity to buy important stakes in the TSOs. But we will see this later. Since 2019, as I said, we have a new vision of European Union towards critical entities that is switching nearly, it's nearly a U-turn with the traditional vision oriented on liberalization. Now the European Union is turning towards the idea of protecting the critical entities in different subsectors, for example, in cyber with the NIS directive, but also in terms of risk preparedness, and so on. So it's an evolving vision also of the EU, but the idea is that China already entered in deep the electric sector of the European Union. So are there consequences on energy and on global security for the European Union? So to go a little in deep with the Chinese actors' presence in Europe, we're looking that it's a movement that started at the eve of the 2010s, in Portugal, with State Grid acquiring 25% of REN being the electric TSO of Portugal. And the idea is that a growing movement with different Chinese actors that are all state-sponsored or directly state-owned, and targeting especially at countries that were having economic troubles, that were having problems to recover after the economic crisis, because it's mostly focused on Portugal, Italy, Greece, so the southern part of Europe. And it's a growing movement, having different actors, so state grid, southern grid, state energy investment, free growth scope, also in order to avoid being considered by the regulation of the European Union as a problem in terms of competition. Mostly all of these economic entities are belonging directly to the Chinese state, but they are different entities, so it cannot be considered as some kind of new monopoly according to the regulation of the European Union. So to have a broader picture now, we are looking at the map of Europe and considering that now there is an important Chinese presence in electric transport and distribution in, of course, first of all, Portugal, but also Italy, because China is possessing 35% of the dedicated fund of the Italian Cassa dei Depositi that is oriented towards all the networks in Italy. So the Chinese are possessing 35% of electricity and gas TSO and DSO. Also, Chinese state actors acquired very important stakes in Greece, in Montenegro, in Luxembourg, and also in National Grid being one of the TSOs in the United Kingdom. It's not the only one, because as in Germany, there are multiple TSOs in the United Kingdom, excuse me. Yet there is an important presence. There was attempts made in 2016 and 2015 in both Belgium with Elia and also in Germany with 50 Hertz, 50 Hertz being the most important TSO and DSO in Germany. But the German state authorities blocked at the last minute the bailout by Chinese state companies. So we're looking at the disposition of Chinese state companies, and they're becoming increasingly more and more important. They're also present in also different subsectors in energy in other countries, such as Spain, France, Poland, etc., etc. Yet their core of presence in energy since 2012 is now electricity transport and distribution. And what is interesting is that multiple level strategy. For the moment, I described the strategy looking especially at the companies, but we are having also different layers beyond and under, over and under. Looking at the layer over, it's the layer of the international organization, because the Chinese states also created an international organization called the GATECO, so Global Energy Interconnection Development Corporation, in order to gather all the actors that could be interested in developing an electric corridor in Eurasia and also beyond Eurasia, because the idea is also to merge this electric corridor within BRI projects. So for the moment, it's intended to be in Eurasia, but it could also develop from an interconnection between Europe, Asia, and Africa. And when looking at the different companies that are participating, this organization that has been integrated by the UN as one of the ECOSOC, so Economic and Social organization recognized by the United Nations, we can consider that there are the different actors that have been brought by Chinese state actors. So Elia in Luxembourg, REN in Portugal, Terna in Italy. So there is also this opportunity for the Chinese state actor to develop their international presence and to promote their vision, explaining that it's not only a Chinese position. Look, there are also European companies that are interested in, but the idea is that these European companies are also very tightly linked to China. It's not only a vision that is structured only around energy issues, because it will be a very European vision to think of this kind of silos, and in the Chinese strategy, it's not considered the same way. It's a cross vision, and the energy transition is considered to be intertwined with digital transition and other issues, especially inside the GateCo, you're also having dedicated subgroup, and you're having a dedicated subgroup to the data and cyber transition, digital transition in energy, led by Huawei. Because the idea is also to use Chinese-based technology in order to promote the digital layer of this global interconnection and to have a global system in BRI that is a road, not only physical road, but an electric road, also a digital road, and with everything intertwined. And what's also very interesting is that I was talking about an upper layer, a middle layer, but we're also having a lower layer in this global strategy of China. That is the layer centered around research and development, around technological cooperation. State Grid dedicated research center called the GAIRI, open in Germany, a subsidiary called the GAIRI Europe. And when you're looking at what the GAIRI Europe is focusing on, there are data and energy, cyber, energy IoT, smart grids, data management, cyber security. And the GAIRI Europe is also very influent in terms of creating research synergies all over Europe, which research consortiums, also to have an influence on the different research that are being conducted in Europe on these topics. So it's a very integrated strategy with different levels. Everything also is belonging directly to the Chinese state. And it's interesting to put again this global strategy into the framework of Belt and Road Initiative, because Belt and Road Initiative is a cross-sector framework. The EU and China energy transition are considered an opportunity inside BRI. And there is this strategy that is at the core of the project that is centered on State Grid project of ultra high voltage Eurasian interconnection. And what's very interesting is that this project is proposed by State Grid since the eve of the 2010s. And it was proposed several times in 2010, 2011, 2012. And at the beginning, this project was having not really a very important European consideration, because the European did not understand what was the point behind this project to create this global interconnection between Europe and China. So Europe is mostly independent in terms of energy production, so there is no need to create a global interconnection. So this idea from the Chinese state companies to buy stakes in TSOs, in DSOs, and to enter in deep the European electric sector is also an answer to this this failure of the first step of the project of State Grid, because State Grid was having no positive answer from European counterparts, and now in buying and in penetrating directly European electric sector, it's easier for them to promote this idea now of this new electric corridor, this new interconnection, with also, as I spoke already, this multiple layer strategy, the middle with the buyouts in TSO and DSO, the upper with the normalization initiative through GateCo, and the lower with the R&D network through GAIRI Europe. And this strategy is still growing nowadays with new opportunities in specific technologies. Now we are looking, for example, on what's happening in hydrogen and in the China-Europe cooperation on hydrogen. As I already mentioned, China is a very strong player in the Portuguese energy sector. And now we're looking, for example, at what's happening at the Sines Harbor in Portugal with the project led also by State Grid for the Sines Green Hydrogen Consortium. That is also the idea to integrate potentially this hydrogen production into a global energy system with potential. For the moment, there are still very important technological barriers, but potentially having a vision towards hydrogen maritime importation and exportation through the Sinesh harbor. So Sinesh is also an asset that is being considered to be brought by also not this time Chinese energy companies, but Chinese maritime transportation company, especially COSCO. So it's a very cross-sector orientation. And in Europe, there is still this vision that energy is a silo, energy is a sector by itself. So it's very difficult for European authorities to consider that China is having this time a global strategy to integrate all the systems around energy. Yet Europe is, as I said before, is changing its way and not only looking at energy networks as an asset to be liberalized, but also looking now in deep as energy networks being a core of its global security. So now, and for the moment, it's only foresight analysis, but what may happen is that a very important backlash from Europe towards China in terms of the protection of critical assets, because with this new orientation of the von der Leyen Commission towards the protection of critical assets, it may be a very difficult, a very different position toward China, and it could be more difficult from China to follow on with this dedicated strategy. Yet, Chinese state actors are already very present in the European electric subsector and globally in the European energy sector. And the question that remains open is that, is it too late from the European Union to work on this specific strategy of China? Thank you. I was more or less 20 minutes as planned. So if you have questions, please ask them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. I see that we have a person has raised his hand. Orma, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you very much for giving me the floor and to ask. This presentation was very, very interesting. It's more a comment than a question, but it rang many bells to me as an engineer working for the French TSO, because we are working with other European TSOs, especially Ren, the Portuguese one, and we felt the change around 2012 when State Grid of China entered the capital of the company, and Ren became keener on gathering information from the functioning of the European electricity system. And I have another experience related to artificial intelligence. RT has run last year a worldwide contest on artificial intelligence about the grid operation. And so I think it's related to your comment about the multi-layer aspect of this topic. China ranked first, second, and third, and we have found no European companies before the 40th rank of this contest. And I think it's very illustrative with your, I hope it will provide you fuel to your argument. And in fact, I had an additional question. Were you aware of the SIGRE study performed in 2019 about global grid? So SIGRE is a worldwide association of network and system operator. And the conclusion was quite simple. There is definitely a benefit in merging to a worldwide power system, but there is the balance have to be struck with resilience. And my question would be, what about resilience? the larger we value resilience, the lower the benefits of this super grid is. And the current COVID sanitary crisis shows how important resilience is. What would be your comment and your feeling about this resilient topic?
Many thanks for your comment. Of course, it's fueling my my research, and thank also for your question. And before answering, I wanted to underline a point. This presentation I made is not to put shame on China and explaining that China is having an aggressive strategy, etc., etc. No, it's only for the moment to explain that, okay, there is a very important and very efficient strategy from an external actor outside Europe to enter Europe and to play with different rules, because China is not a EU member state, so is not having to conform to EU regulation, or not in the same way as EU companies and EU states have to. Yet, China may also be a very interesting partner, and that's not really a matter of competition. It's mostly a matter of co-opetition. So understanding what's the strategy of the other in order to benefit from the different technologies and the different expertise. European companies may benefit from China, but also being aware that there are some risks under. So it's mostly linked to your question about the opportunity of the super grid interconnection. It's exactly the same. For example, the first time, just a parenthesis, the first time Chinese State Grid proposed this global interconnection was at the SIGRE, also at the eve of the 2010s. So looking at this supergrid interconnection, it's ever the problem. It's that when you're connecting a grid, be in electricity or in gas, but especially in electricity, to another country, we had the problem in Europe with Kosovo a few years ago. There is a risk that a problem in a very small state, or maybe a very important state in Europe, may have a cascading effect all over the grid. And that's the problem in strengthening the interconnection, in strengthening the global development of the grid, is that you may have cascading effects, and you may have cascading effects in countries or in territories when you cannot act. And that's the problem with this idea of supergrid. In Europe, mostly the grid is connected within European Union and also the countries, of the energy community, especially Western Balkans and also Eastern European countries outside Europe. But creating a supergrid, it will be nearly impossible to have a control and to have an audit action of what's happening all over the grid. So now, having continental grids, it's possible to enforce the rules at the same level everywhere. Having a supergrid that could be transcontinental, it will be nearly impossible to enforce the same rules all over the world. So I think it's only my position, but having a too important grid may shift the balance towards the risk than the benefits. We have to be aware of this question, that to have still benefits, we need to have the possibility to enforce rules, to audit the systems. And having a too important grid, it will be impossible, because you cannot have the same regulations in Europe that you're having in China, in the US, in Russia, in Brazil, or anywhere.
Yeah, so coming back still on this point, I mean, in a way, you're talking about resilience, right? The audience, he asked that question about resilience. But from an EU perspective, I mean, when we talk about sort of an interconnected grid, cross-border, regional, or international, there are two aspects to resilience. One is the technical aspect. The other one is the political, social, environmental aspects. There's nothing to do with the grid itself, but about the regulations and harmonization and what. So, what would you think is the biggest impediment then? I mean, you mentioned about the lack of harmonized regulations. would it be possible, for example, to help push through some kind of global regulation for the purpose of promoting such a grid?
Well, I don't think so. I don't believe or only in the technical aspect, but apart the technical aspect, I don't believe in global regulations. Look at what happened in climate. Look at the time we needed to achieve global agreements. It may need 10, 20, 30, 40 years maybe to achieve this kind of global. Imagine that an electric grid, or a grid, maybe not only electric but also gas, but specifically electric grid. An electric grid is the basis of the national security, because without electricity, nothing is working in your country. So the idea to have a global system to decide the rules, it will be a system that is an international system or a supranational system to decide and enforce rules on the most critical assets of your national security, to me is mostly paradoxical. And I think that we will face the opposition of a large number of countries looking at this specific feature. That's why in Europe it's coming step by step. European Union countries, then energy community countries, and so on. And it's not going immediately to a very international and very global level, because it's the basis of the global security of the country. It's not only a matter of energy or electricity, it's a matter of everything working in your country, including the military, including the state itself, including the banking sector. So it's very, very tricky to look at this possibility of creating global norms that won't be technical norms and to enforce them all over the world. I don't think it will be possible, or unless in very large amount of years.
I think there's this general trend towards use of electricity, with electric vehicles and whatnot, as we progress in our energy transition. And there are two big ideas. One is those big international grids connecting the world. In a way, the argument from the Chinese side is efficient allocation of resources, right? Where there's a place where there's sunlight, the other place where it's nighttime, and you can really transfer or move all the power needed to where it is needed. And then the other big picture is about distributed, decentralized energy systems with renewable energy, where we talk about local communities or very small scale things, not about the big utilities. So, I mean, the idea of an international interconnected grid is based on the idea of efficient allocation of resources where it's needed and from where it can be produced to where it is needed. But from an EU perspective, do you think there's any appetite or rationale or justification to need such a grid in the first place?
Thank you for your question. No, I agree with you. I don't think that there is an appetite from the EU perspective. The EU perspective is mostly, at the time, considering the decentralization of the grids and not the centralization and not the super grids. And that's why when the Chinese state actor, especially State Grid, came to the CIGRE and came to the European Union in 2012, 2013 to propose this idea of the super grid, there was no positive answer from the EU side, because the EU is engaged in the energy transition, and the energy transition in electricity is mostly about decentralization of production and consumption. So it's also colliding with the global orientation of the European Union by itself. So when entering into the DSO, into the TSO, and also into the global associations at the European level of DSO and TSO, especially, for example, the TSO, it's the NSOE in electricity. It helped also the Chinese state actor to make some lobbying towards this idea that having a super grid, okay, it's not inside the global orientation of the European Union, but consider that at a technical level, it could be very interesting because it could foster the resilience.
Okay, I think the time allocated for the first speaker is up, and I don't see other questions being raised. So thank you very much for your presentation. Very interesting. And now I would like to invite the second speaker, Mr. Shen, to give his presentation, please.
Okay, I will share my screen. Okay, can you see it?
Yeah.
Good afternoon, or evening, or morning. I'm Shen Xi, a PhD candidate of China University of Geosciences, Wuhan. And my presentation today is titled as Research on the Resilience of Nodes in Energy Mineral Resources Supply Chain under Emergency Risk based on the multi-layer complex network. I'm still a grade 3 PhD candidate, and I'm majored in management science and engineering, and my research field is mainly the complex network modeling and simulation. My presentation today consists of 5 parts, and as you can see, in the overview, coal electricity is of the largest proportion of electricity in many countries. With the severe changing international situation and the energy mineral resources is critical to the development of countries with certain energy resource endowment, which makes the international trade of energy mineral resources of a serious strategic importance. More and more factors begin to affect the coal global supply chain network, such as natural hazard, geographical politics, and public health event. The resilience of a system is a widely researched field of system science, which is defined as the capacity to recover from shocks. United by research of engineering systems and resilience, we proposed a new research framework to evaluate the resilience of nodes in the mineral resource trade network system. In our research, based on, as you can see, we based on the multi-layer complex network theory. This paper models the supply chain network of energy mineral resource using a 3-layer relational complex network: trade layer, information layer, and the price index layer. As you can see, the nodes in the of the trade layer and the info layer are both countries that have participated in the international trade of coal. The nodes we marked red are the major coal exporters in the world. It's an example graph, so you can see there are only 2. The edges of the trade layer is the real trade flow between countries. The data we use come from UN Trade, while the edge of the info layer are the competitive relationships between export and import countries, as we regard energy mineral resources as critical resources. In scarce circumstances, import countries may be competitive situation. We measure the competitive capacities of import countries by price elasticity of demand and import quantities. The third layer is a price index layer. The resource shortage caused by risk would definitely cause the change of price. So we set the default value of price index as 1. The nodes of different layers are mapped, as you can see in the graph. The emergency risk is defined as export reduction from a major mineral resource producing countries. In the period one, the nodes directly connected with the RS are the first to be affected, and the affected nodes suffer from import reductions and conducts the risk by reducing export to mitigate risk through the trade layer network. This process is similar to the PageRank algorithm of Google. Period two, due to the imbalance between supply and demand brought by risk, the price index of coal would change by delta H, which attracts the other major coal producing countries to expand their production by beta in each period. And the expanded production will be shared by nodes first being affected and also connected with these other major producer nodes. The share of each qualified nodes is calculated by the price elasticity of demand of each node and the import amount. In the meanwhile, the risk source would resume its production by alpha in each period as well. The risk would be conducted again. Period three, repeated period two, until the total production recovers to the original status. The risk is considered gone, and the sum of all the import deficiency of each node is total loss in this risk. Period four, united by the concept of the price elasticity of demand, we calculated the resilience of each node by the following equation using the simulation result got from above. Where delta E is the total loss of node J, and A is the constant term. Delta L is the scale of risk. A is the constant term. H is the variation of price index, and the negative beta is the resilience index we are looking for. In the case study part, we choose coal to do the case study using the world trade data of 2019. And the price elasticity of demand of major coal import countries using the data of 2010 to 2019, we filtered out 92 countries as the nodes of the network and over 770 trade flows as the edges. And using Gephi, we draw these two pictures. The left one is the major coal export countries, and the right one is the major coal import countries. We filtered out the 6 largest coal importers in the world: China, India, Japan, Republic of Korea, other Asia, and Vietnam. As you can see, China is not the largest importer, but it has the most sources. And these 6 graphs show the main structure of the coal trading world. As you can see in the simulation part, we choose the largest 2 coal import sources of China, Australia and Indonesia as the risk sources, which are also 2 important import sources of India and Japan, and set us 18 different scenarios to simulate the transmission of risk. The detailed results are listed in the chart. As the result part, using the measurement we proposed for the calculating of resilience of nodes, we calculated the resilience of China, India, and Japan, while the risk sources respectively are Australia and Indonesia. As we can see, the value of the nodes resilience calculated with our novel measurement is normally negative, meaning how much loss every 1% rise of the risk level of certain risk source will bring to the targeted node. Due to the large import amount, India has the largest resilience among these three countries when facing the risk from Australia. And China has the largest resilience when facing the risk from Indonesia. According to our result, we think more important sources and a more balanced import structure and bargaining capacity and higher utilization efficiency will bring more resilience to the countries in the coal trade. This is the further work of our research, how the community topology of the trade network affects the transmission of risk and the improvement of the competitive capacity of node around the risk, how to improve more benchmarks to the results and the relationship between price changes and the production. This is my presentation. Thank you for your time. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Okay, there's one question in the chat box. Question from Yu Yong Hyo. Are there many research funds for coal research in China?
Actually, I don't know much about the fund for coal research. To my knowledge, I think there are few specifically research fund on coal. So normally it's about energy resources, not specifically coal. I think I hope this can answer your question.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so no question. Maybe I can ask a question of my own as well. So, I mean, your work is focused on coal as a source of energy security, particularly in the context of importing coal, right? So, in the scheme of things, as we move along with the global energy transition, and as China has pledged to move towards net zero in 2060, how do you think this will affect China's coal imports and also coal consumption?
First, my apology. I don't know much about. I don't research much about the coal's consumption. So, in my research, I just focus on the resource security, as you can see. I think in my research, according to my research result, I think the importation of the coal of China is the amount is very much, and the source is very diversity. So I think these two can affect the result very much. So as you can see, the result is very good for China. I'm not majored in economic, so sorry, I think I can't give you more details about your question.
Can you go back to your earlier slide where you had those diagrams with all the different countries and their sources of coal import.
Okay. You mean this one?
Yeah. Is that the one for China as well?
The
Okay,
one
yeah,
for China?
Yeah, that's the very first one, right? Major coal import sources of China.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
These are the 6 largest importation countries in the world.
So, I mean, another basic question, maybe it's a reframing of my earlier question. With the transition away from coal, I mean, many countries are trying to cut down in their coal usage and move away from coal-fired power plants. Would that mean that the market for purchase of coal or import of coal, it would be an easier market for China?
There isn't a market, a specific a coal market in China, I think, and I'm focused on the simulation of the algorithm. So about the internal market of China, I don't know much. Sorry.
Okay. Any other questions? I don't see any questions. Or is there anything else you'd like to elaborate on with regards to your paper and your presentation?
My paper is on review, so that I don't have something to illustrate.
Okay, we still have some time left, but if there are no questions, and if you are agreeable, maybe we can just move on to the next speaker first. And if there are more questions later on, we can do it after all the speakers have spoken. Is that okay with you?
Okay.
I just saw a last question on the chat.
Okay, there's a question by Sophia. Usually when one speaks about energy security, HHL is discussed. Have you compared your results with it? What is a HHL? I'm not a quantitative person, so I'm not sure what that means. But do you know what that means?
It's Hirschman-Herfindahl index, which describes the diversity between the importers and its share in overall import of a country. It's concentration, like measure.
Okay, Mr. Shen, do you understand the question?
I understand the question, and I don't know HHI as well, but I think it's just an index of the energy consumption, right?
No, actually, this index looks on the structure of an import of a country. So supposing that China invests, I don't know, 100 tons of coal, and then it will calculate the share of each importer in that 100 tons, and then, Okay, thanks. Sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Shen, anything else you'd like to add? Mr. Shen? Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. It's just Mr. Shen that it seems that Mr. Shen's system has frozen.
Okay. Yeah, so I think I'm back online. If there are no more questions, for Mr. Shen. Then I suggest we move on to the next presenter. Okay, Philip, would you like to start, please?
Yes, sure. Let me start to share my screen with you. Can you see the screen? All right. So thank you for, oh, doesn't seem to work. Can I have a problem.
Maybe you do it without the full screen.
Yeah, I think that would be best. Yes. Let me see if I can exit the full screen mode. And now I have. All right. Okay. Can you see the screen now? So I'm just scrolling up and down if this is fine with you. Okay, so thanks for having me. I have one additional problem. My MacBook is a little bit handicapped, so I cannot unfold my screen, my laptop fully. So that's why you see me in this this folded way. So I'm trying to do it that way. So I'm gonna talk about the interdependencies between countries in the provision of energy. This is joint work with Doina Radulescu from the University of Bern, and I have a full-time position as an economist at the Swiss Competition Commission. So that's why you see this in the background, and also why I have to make a disclaimer that all the statements and views contained in the paper and in this presentation are solely those of us, the authors, and cannot be attributed to the Swiss Competition Commission or its secretariat. So let me start with a motivation or an observation. We know that several countries, or almost all countries in this world, are facing the current challenge. That is, they need to grant the security of supply in the provision of electricity, while at the same time they need to decarbonize the energy system. And on top of this, we also have the the decision that many countries want to phase out nuclear power plants, as for instance also Switzerland aims at. And that's one observation. And the second one is here illustrated by this article from the Financial Times. We have seen, I tried to make this a bit bigger so you can see it better, where the UK or Britain claimed, or not claimed, that they committed to quit coal generation by I think 2025. While still their industry, their heavy industry needs fossil fuel to manufacture products, including steel and cement. So certain products still need to have power generation that stems from coal. And this raised the question to us, well, is there or do there exist strategic interdependencies between the countries? For example, that one country quits this dirty fuel production or electricity production, while at the same time the country wants to or needs to import dirty fuel that comes from abroad. That's one question. And before I turn to the exact research questions we have in this paper, let me set out the stage by looking at some further figures and graphs to make the point clear. So here, what you see on this map is the electricity production capacities in European countries denoted in megawatts. And you see the darker the areas of the countries are, the higher the capacity of electricity production is in this particular country. And you see, for instance, that Germany, Italy, Spain, and the UK, they have quite dark areas, whereas when we look at the eastern countries in Europe, they have lighter areas. Of course, this map does not account for GDP or population, etc. But still, it shows us a quite heterogeneous picture when it comes to the ability to produce electricity, and this also could give room for certain strategic interdependencies between the countries. That's one observation as well. The second one is given by the following figure. When we look at new capacities by fuel type between the 1970 and 2020. What you see here in this graph is, well, these are the years here. We start with 1970 and we go up to 2020. And then the years before 1990, let's say, we have energy systems that are majorly driven by nuclear energy production and production that comes from coal. Whereas later on, after the 90s, we see a convergence or a transition to a more renewable-based energy system or more renewable-based energy system. So here we have solar and also wind that have pretty large amounts or pretty large shares in those new capacities that we see overall on an aggregate level. And also when we look at negative amounts, so the disinstallments, we see that there are many disinstallments in nuclear power plants. So we are on the way on a transitioning way towards a more renewable-based energy system on an aggregate level. And lastly, what we also see, we see it already a bit here, that the capacities that are newly installed, they are bigger in terms of megawatts than they have been in the past. And this is also illustrated by this graph here. Here we see that in the last decades or years and decades, the additional energy capacities by year in Europe, also here in megawatts, they really increased a lot. So you see that this increase started off, well, already here during the industrialization, but also in particular later on after the year 2000. So this could also be a sign of something that has been mentioned by Nicolas in the first presentation, that the electrification does seem to play a major role or an important role today, and will also continue to play an important role in the future because of this need to combat the climate change in the future. Many countries have set up target goals. For instance, Switzerland has set a target goal of reaching net zero in 2050. So these are the additional observations I would have liked to make. And what we can take from this is, well, energy investments, investments into capacity buildings, well, they are not cheap. They are costly. It's a long-term project also. The investments are lumpy, and they are also risky. And so there could be a free riding argument between the countries, playing between the countries, such that one country decides, well, I install fewer and I free ride on the investments of another country, in particular when the markets become more integrated. The other thing is that this free riding argument could also be aggravated by this transition process that we are facing or experiencing at the moment towards more renewable energy-based systems, because in this environment, the investments become more risky due to the more volatile energy profile of those resources, the renewable resources. the intermittency becomes bigger. So there's a more volatile profile, not only in terms of the energy provision, but also in terms of the prices. And due to also to the massive subsidization of these renewable-based energy sources in Europe, the prices could also are likely to be declining in the near future. Or in the future decades. So the environment becomes less comfortable for private investors, and this could also give rise to strategic interdependencies. This lays down the ground or gives us the basis for our main research questions we have in this research project. First, we are asking ourselves, do there exist interdependencies between economies in the provision of energy, more precisely in the capacity building up for electricity production? So here we abstain a bit from the discussion between fossil fuels and renewable fuels, and if there are substitution patterns between the countries. The latter will tackle with the second question, namely with the question, are there countries substituting domestic energy production using fossil resources with energy imports based on fossil resources? So in loose words, do countries substitute their dirty production with dirty production that comes from abroad? That would be the second research question. And let me start first with the literature. So our research very briefly relates to the literature on spillover models that deal with this free riding argument. So Murdoch and Sandler, for instance, looked at the free riding argument in defense spending, found some evidence. They also looked at environmental regulation. There is also literature on governmental spending. The research that we do relates also to investment decisions in energy capacity. So Joskov and Tirol, they looked at market designs, how they influenced the investment decisions. We do not in this paper, but still our paper relates to the investment decisions, how countries seem to make the investment decisions, here in particular dependent on other countries in investment decisions. And finally, our paper also relates to the discussion about the carbon leakage effect where countries or companies relocate their site of productions due to stricter regulations in their domestic countries, for instance. Turning to the empirical analysis, let me briefly explain you first what our main hypothesis and our main methodological approaches we made. So first, in the first part of the paper, we employ spatial regression methods that look at the spatial interdependencies in capacity investments. So the hypothesis is investment in electric power plants in jurisdictional country I in year T also depends on the investment decision of neighboring countries as well as on domestic factors. The estimator we use there is a spatial deriving model so we employ spatial econometric analysis where we account for the spatial lag between the domestic country and the foreign country. So the spatial lag accounts for the investments in the neighboring countries, but also, and that's the Durbin part, so to speak, it also accounts for the characteristics of those foreign countries or those neighboring countries. So also this is included in the lag. The spatial lag is referring to the neighboring countries. So this is the first part of our empirical analysis. In the second part, and this is related to the first question I've mentioned before, In the second part, we will look at the energy production and import patterns. So this substitution story that I've been elucidating before. So the hypothesis there is, the hypothesis is countries substitute domestic fossil energy production with energy imports that are based on fossil raw materials. So what I said in loose words, dirty production domestically reduced, and dirty production from abroad imported. What we there use methodologically is or are fixed effects estimators as well as instrumental variable estimators, because there is some endogeneity problem in there. I will come to this in a minute. And finally, what we also do, we conduct an event study, and we looked at the impact of the implementation of the European emission trading system in 2003. And the idea there is the introduction of emission trading with fixed caps has led to stricter requirements, regulatory requirements, and higher costs for the EU electricity supply sector. That makes domestic fossil energy production less attractive compared to imports. So the idea is that after the implementation of this EU ETS in 2003, the imports should increase and compared to the period before 2003, the imports in fossil fuel energy production. Fossil energy produced by fossil fuels. So let me turn to the results, and before I do that, let me briefly explain to you where the data comes from that we use for this research project. So the capacities the power plant capacities that play a big role for us, in particular in the spatial regression part. So we get this data from the Standard & Poor's Power Plant database, and there we have data for 17 countries, European countries, in the time between 1978 to 2017. Then we also need energy imports and exports. So this is what we get from the IEA. Final consumption, population, and GDP. So we need to control for these factors, in particular in the fixed effects regressions, where we look at the imports-exports patterns. Then we also control, for instance, for number of heating and cooling and degree days for prices as well. So we get the data there from Eurostat and also the International Monetary Fund. We also have data from BP Statistical Review of World Energy, where we use data on oil, coal, and natural gas reserves that we need to use as instrumental variables in our second part of the research, where we looked at the imports and export patterns between the countries. So this is briefly as to the data. And now I can turn to the results, and I give you this big table, and I will guide you step by step through this table. So what you see here are the results from our spatial regression analysis. So there are 8 columns, so they refer to different models or regression models we have done or conducted in this part of the research. What I would really like to focus you on is this parameter row. Let me try if I can make this bigger. So this parameter row or this coefficient row gives you the spatial correlation between the countries' energy in energy capacity building. So a negative row would imply that there is a negative spatial correlation, meaning that, in loose words again, meaning that if one country invests more in energy investments, the neighboring countries invest less in energy, in new capacities for energy production, electricity production. So the dependent variable is the the domestic capacity building, and the independent variables are the spatial lags. So how much do the countries, the neighboring countries, invest into new capacities in order to be able to produce electricity, and also their characteristics like the interest rate in those countries, and also how much electricity is imported and exported, how much is the change of the final consumption in electricity. So we all account for these variables in the domestic country as well as in the neighboring countries. And you see that this parameter rho, that's the first observation. This parameter rho is always negative. Well, here it is negative, but not significant. But in 7 out of 8 regressions, it is highly significant and negative. So that's the first observation, the observation that we have a negative spatial relationship in the energy, in the capacity building for electricity production. Then, as to the columns, the different columns stem from the different weighting matrices we use in the spatial regression. So we look at, in the first 2 columns, we take only weighting matrices where we have zeros and ones for either countries are neighbors, geographic neighbors, or then they become a 1, or they are not neighbors, then they have a 0. So we only account for the fact or the observations whether there are geographic neighbors or not. In the second column here, we also count for price volatility. Then the number of observations drops because for this measure here, we don't have data for all countries. Then in columns 3 and 4, again, turning to the weighting matrix, there we looked at the geographic distance between the countries. So before we only had the information whether there are neighbors or not. Here we also count for the geographic distance between the countries. And also here we have a regression for that accounts for the price volatility, because higher price volatility could also lead to lower investments. And in fact, the sign is negative and significant. Then columns 5 and 6, they deal with the capacity of transmission between the countries. So column 5 looks at in the weighting matrix. So in the weighting matrix in column 5 accounts for the number of transmission lines in the countries, between the countries, in order to transmit electricity. And because this could also affect this strategic interdependency. And column 6 accounts not only for the number of transmission lines, but also for the capacity those transmission lines have. And column 7 and 8, they only include data before 2003 and 2007, because in between those 2 dates, the countries turn to a third-party access to the transmission grids, where one could say, well, afterwards, the investment decisions are more driven by private actors that act in multiple jurisdictions in the country. So the strategic interdependency on a country level could become weaker. So that's why we made a break there, and we only included the years before that this regulation has been set in. So the main message out of this exercise is, well, there exist robust negative spatial correlations when we look at energy capacity buildings or buildups. As to the second research question, remember, we were looking, or we aimed at also looking at this import and export pattern in dirty energy or in fossil energy fuels, we started with this observation here given in this graph. So here you see in the left graph, so the time is from 1960 to 2020, that the share of domestic fossil energy production in total consumption declined over the whole range of time. So the share of domestic fossil energy production declined in sharing consumption in the countries, in the European countries, while at the same time the share of fossil energy imports in total consumption increased. So this raised the question to us: well, does there exist a substitution pattern in the sense that we have observed in this article of the Financial Times, where the UK said, okay, we wanna quit dirty production, but at the same time the UK, they need dirty production that comes from abroad. And this we wanted to analyze more systematically and coherently in a fixed effects regression analysis. And I'm going to present you the results from this exercise in this table here. So this table gives you the regression results we have from this exercise. Also here we have 4 different columns. The first 2 columns take as the dependent variable the domestic, the imports of fossil energy fuels in total final consumption. Here we have the imports in the first column, and in the second column we have the net imports, because some imports could also just be there for being re-exported. So we accounted for the net exports. In the third and fourth column, we used the instrumental variable approach. So let me turn to this in a second. The first observation is what we have is, well, there is a negative relationship between domestic fossil energy production in total final consumption and the dependent variable, namely the imports of fossil energy fuels in total final consumption. So this could give us the message, well, countries substitute one for the other. They do not do this fully, as the parameters are not exactly 1 or higher than 1, so they do the substitution only partially. Briefly on the instrumental variable approach that's here in the column 3 and column 4. Column 4 is also again for the net exports, column 3 is for the imports. Here we instrumented the domestic fuels with domestic coal resources, domestic gas resources, and domestic oil resources. Because you could imagine that, for instance, if abroad the regulations, the environmental regulations are laxer and the prices are lower, then imports become economically more attractive, and countries could decide to raise imports and lower production simultaneously, and then we have an indigeneity problem. So we say, okay, instead of looking at the fossil energy production components, we take the resource components, and we argue that those resource components only affect the imports via the independent variables, the fossil production fuels, the fossil production levels. And so we instrumented the fossil production, like oil production, coal production, and gas production with those resources, and we got the robust results. Also here we have again negative coefficients of the same size. So yes, we can observe negative or substitution patterns, and they seem to be quite robust in our model. Then lastly, I want to give you an impression of the results of our event study we did. Remember, we looked at the European, at the implementation of the European emission trading system. And as the dependent variable in those regressions, we took the share of fossil imports in total energy consumption. And as the independent variables, we took the time lags. So from 1989 to 2017, and the coefficient of those time lags were 0 and insignificant before the implementation of the European emission trading system in 2003, and afterwards they become positive. So this gives us support for the message that the higher regulation, a stricter regulation, a domestic regulation here in terms of the European emission trading system leads to, or can be associated with higher share of fossil imports in total energy consumption. So this relates to this carbon leakage effect also, where countries substitute or fossil fuels that comes from abroad, that has been produced domestically with fossil fuels that comes from abroad. So in conclusion, we see the problem of many countries, namely that they want to turn to, they need and must turn to a more renewable-based energy system. This is aggravated again by nuclear phasing out. And this raises also the concerns about security of supply. And this also gives rise for a free riding argument where countries say, okay, I grant the security of supply with imports of energy coming from abroad. This is also amplified by the pressure, as I explained, by the pressure to decarbonize economies and CO2 emissions in order to combat the climate change problem we have. That leads to an expansion of renewables, lower and volatile electricity prices, and in turn to a more risky environment for private investors. Our results then show that we have a negative relationship between investments in new electricity generation capacity between neighboring countries in Europe. We also see from our fixed effects regressions and instrumental variable regressions that countries at least partially seem to substitute domestic fossil energy production with fossil energy imports. And this questions the self-praise of countries regarding their carbon-free domestic electricity generation. They say, okay, we reduce our dirty fuel production, but at the same time, they import dirty fuels from abroad, or energy that has been produced by dirty fuels abroad. As an economic policy implementation, we could argue, well, it might make sense to place a tax on fossil-based energy imports, because this free riding causes a negative externality on other countries, and this negative externality could be internalized with this tax. So this is where I'd like to stop with this presentation, and I'm happy to discuss and open for questions. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Do we have any questions for this last presenter? No? Any questions from our fellow speakers on this presentation? Or is there anybody who would like to make any general comments as well? Nicholas?
With pleasure. Many thanks, Philippe, for this presentation. I was wondering myself, do you integrate the idea of renewable energies, not fossil fuels, of course, but fossil minerals dependence? Because it's also a matter of externalizing the dirt, using renewable energy sources that are, for example, mostly dependent on strategic metals, and the mining of strategic metals is everything but clean. And is it not also a matter of externalizing the dirt, explaining that, oh, the renewable energy produced in Europe, it's clean, but making some kind of LCOE analysis of the renewable energy industrial element to produce the electricity is everything but clean?
I understand. No, we are not looking at I mean, you're talking, if I understand you correctly, about materials like lithium and cobalt and all this material that is needed to produce batteries. No, we don't, but certainly that would be an interesting research project on its own. I'm quite confident about this, but we don't, honestly, yes. But I fully agree with your observation. Also, there we could say that there, or we could argue at least that there is a negative externality going on. In particular, when we look at countries, the Asian countries, where it is said, I don't know if this is correct, but at least it is said, but by some commentators that these production of those materials can cause not only negative externalities on a country level, but also to society. The production, the labor conditions, etc. Yeah, that would be interesting as well. Yeah, I fully agree. Yeah.
I also want to add, I think the whole discussion about energy transition to renewable energy, it's a cleaner source in terms of emissions, if you look at it from one way, but there's also the question of electronic waste at the end of the day, right? I mean, if you look at the full supply chain from the mining part all the way until the end of the shelf life, with the electronic waste, what do we actually do with them? But I think this topic, I mean, progress and development on these issues are moving quite quickly. So first of all, if you talk about mining, there's a lot more talk these days about whether we should further regulate the whole mining industry, where we actually get the minerals from, whether there are alternative minerals, if minerals from certain locations are really not up to the typical ESG standards. And then further down, if you talk about the end of the shelf life of the equipment, I guess one aspect that is increasingly also being discussed is the recycling of all this electronic waste, and to recycle all these critical minerals for use in the future. But of course, this will only happen 20, 30 years down the road, because that's how long this equipment lasts, right? So that's kind of good as well, because with the recycling component, it means you don't have to dig as much, or hopefully, well, at least meet part of that demand. Okay, I see we have a question from person, Mr. Bowman, at the chat box. I will just read it out. Question to Mr. Sulger. Thank you very much for the very interesting analysis. Given the rather long time frame you consider, did you try to see if any changing behavior occurs after the power system was deregulated in Europe at the end of the 1990s? Was there any huge change in role in terms of capacity expansion? And did you account for the evolution in time of cross-border capacity, open bracket, grid expansion postponed?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. It is indeed a very important question. What is the influence of this institutional change that we had and have in Europe after the 90s? That started off in the 90s. We tried. We did not look at structural breaks in the analysis, but what we did is so far that let me turn to this slide here. Focus on the last two columns. Here we only included the years up to 2003 and 2007, because in those years the European Union implemented a third-party access to the grids, a regulated third-party access to the grids. And one could argue that after this implementation or after this regulation was enforced, the whole decision-making about capacity building, etc., is more driven by aspects aspects that private investors take into consideration. So more benefit aspects, cost and benefit aspects, and less strategic aspects. That's why we only included the years up to then, and we see that the results remain robust. Unfortunately, if you would flip the picture, if we would only include the years after this third-party access regulation has been put in place, the number of observations, of course, will drop tremendously. That could cause the results to become insignificant. And we cannot judge whether this is actually because of this story that the decision making is driven more by private investors that are active in multiple countries in Europe, or if this is if this is just due to our to the drop in observation we have in our regression analysis. But to keep a long story short, no, we haven't looked at this systematically. We have just done this break here, and we see our results remain robust up to this point there. We could also argue that afterwards, the strategic interdependency that might have been in place on a national level, more aggregate level before the liberalization process, is more indirectly affected by this regulation, environmental regulation that is put in place by several countries in Europe due to this massive subsidization of renewable energy sources. So one could argue that this strategic interdependency on a country level would work via the strictliness of the regulation. So yeah, it is certainly an issue, and yeah, we haven't addressed this in this research by looking at this systematically at each point of time where the regulation becomes more liberalized, because there were several steps, several directives in Europe that lead to a gradual increase of liberalization of those markets, and one could consider to look at them separately. I hope this answer addresses a bit your question.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions? We have about 3 minutes left. Okay, so well, actually, I noticed you were still on slide what? Slide 16, slide 17. Were there other slides you actually like to share with the other people? You know, at the conclusion, you were showing the slide number 16.
Well, there are just some backup slides where we that's just for that was mentioned for the discussion, but I put those because maybe it would be needed for the discussion.
Okay, so no more questions, and we are close to ending time. For the speakers, is there anything else you'd like to add to your presentation before I close this session? No, Nicholas, nothing? Shen? No? Philip?
No, thank you.
No? Okay, so we are on time. Thank you very much to all of you. Very interesting session. And I wish you all the best with your research.